I'm now joined by UNRWA's Director of Planning, Sam Rose. Good to see you there, Sam. I mean, you're there actually in Rafah, in Gaza. How would you describe the situation that's going on there?
The situation here is extremely difficult. The population, over 1 million people in Rafah, are faced with constant bombardment from artillery shells, tank fire, airstrikes. This is inside and outside the declared evacuation zone, and we're witnessing mass movement of people into other parts of Rafah and beyond as they're packing up their things. They're packing up their tents, the few belongings that they have, and they're seeking refuge in places that they hope will be safer.
And how would you describe the strategy that Israel is employing at the moment?
I mean, I can't really talk about military strategy, but it seems to be happening with very little regard for the safety of the civilian population. We're talking about deeply traumatized, deeply humiliated and degraded people who've been forced to move several times over the past several months. There is no safe place for them to go to. It's very difficult when they get there in terms of space, in terms of access to services. So they're moving from out of one hell into another hell. I know that's an awful analogy, but that's the situation right now on the ground in Gaza, as you can see from the pictures on the screen.
And how are you able to operate delivering aid? I mean, do you have any aid left to send out?
We have some supplies. We have very little supplies. As you said at the top of the story, nothing has really come in since Sunday, since last weekend, and we have no fuel either. And fuel is essentially the lifeline. Without fuel, we cannot move our trucks around. We cannot power generators that provide water, that provide dialysis machines in hospitals, that provide healthcare. So very little, very, very difficult environment. We're doing what we can. UNRWA is the largest aid agency in Gaza. We have staff around the Gaza Strip, but they themselves are affected by this emergency as well. They themselves, their families, are also going through displacement. So we're doing what we can, but until those supply routes, until the fuel starts coming in, again, there is a limited amount that we are able to do.
So just give us your reaction to, I mean, Israel blocking the Rafah crossing on the Palestinian side, Israeli settlers blocking some roads where this vital aid is being transported towards Gaza. What do you think and what do you feel about this?
I mean, it's just yet another nail in the coffin of a desperate situation. I mean, in all circumstances, access to humanitarian aid has to be protected. Safety has to be provided to humanitarian workers. This is in accordance with international humanitarian law, and we see time and time again in this conflict, breaches of these circumstances. We've had almost 200 UNRWA workers killed since October. So very, very difficult and done, it appears, with blatant disregard for the civilian population who are facing the most desperate of conditions. They were already on the brink of famine in southern Gaza just a few weeks ago, and the situation now is becoming much, much worse.
And what's your assessment? I mean, earlier this week, we had some figures about 80,000 who fled Rafah. At the moment, do you have any latest figures?
The figures we issued as the United Nations, as UNRWA overnight, yesterday evening, were 110,000 people on the move. But I can tell you those figures are going up dramatically every hour. Outside my office window was a camp of displaced people. It thins out with every minute and with every hour. So I wouldn't be surprised if those numbers are up to about 150,000 by the end of the day, certainly way over 110,000 now. And we're seeing people move from within the evacuation areas, but also beyond those evacuation areas as well, because the bombardments are not limited to those areas. And I'd say that the mood of the people is very, very low. It's dejected. The move of people is quite orderly, where at least where I am, it isn't chaotic. It's very orderly. There's a sense of resignation, a sense of a defeated people in that sense, and these are civilians. I'm not talking defeated in that sense, but people are just accepting and fearing the worst, and they're doing what they can to escape.
Sam, you've described this situation as a medieval siege. Do you see any kind of hope that the aid routes will be reopened so you can resupply your stocks?
They have to be. We have to see an end to this. We remain hopeful. We continue to work, and we call on all parties to the conflict and member states of the United Nations that have influence to get these restrictions lifted, get the crossings reopened so that we can get aid and supplies and fuel and water and medicines into these people who most desperately need them.
That's Sam Rose for us, UNRWA's Director of Planning. Thank you so much, Sam, for joining us from Rafah in Gaza.